Hopefully now you have imported your family tree from Family Search into your new Ancestry account, and it should look something like this. I always recommend starting with one of your deceased ancestors. Usually the most recent one is good. So I'm going to start with my grandmother, Ruth Pulsifer. Just click on the person's name and select Profile, and we'll take you to their page. The place I like to begin is here with the hints. You can see there are 25 hints for my grandmother. So go ahead and click on hints. And the first one you'll see is Ancestry member trees. Now this says here there's 10 of them that are public, which means that there are 10 other people using Ancestry who have my grandmother in their tree. And I can go look at their tree and see what information they have. But this is secondary research, and I like to do primary research first and use secondary research as a resource. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore that just so I don't have to keep scrolling past it. If I want to go back and look at it, I can click right here on ignored hints and look at that information again. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and you can see here that there are some images from my grandmother, her handwriting, some of her heirlooms that she's left behind, her gravestone, her autograph that have been posted by different people, the cemetery where she's buried. But I'm going to skip through all of that, and even pictures of her, and get to the documents. So the first document we come to is the California voter registrations, and we can click on that, review it. I'm not sure. Yes, my grandmother did live in California during the war, World War II. And we're going to look for her, Mrs. Ruth L. Pulsifer. Not sure that's her because she wouldn't be a Mrs. We can come back to that later if we want. So I'm just going to go back to the hints page by hitting the back button and go to the next hint. So the first one here is U.S. Find a Grave Index, which is a great resource for finding information about your ancestors. It's not part of Ancestry, but it will take you to this page, and it usually has a lot of information that you can glean. So I'm going to hit review. And here you can see the gravestone and information about what it says on the gravestone, what cemetery she's buried in. But the most important thing to me is the answer to this question right here. It says why. That means yes, she has a bio, which means if I click on this link right here that will take me to find a grave, it will give me more information about my grandmother. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you can see here again her date of birth, her date of death, where she was born, where she died, and where she was buried. But if you keep scrolling down, it actually gives you her obituary. So you can read that whole thing and learn more about your ancestor. And it will also tell you information about people that are related to her. So for example, she is survived by one daughter, Darlene Frank Ramsey. That happens to be my mom and dad, who live in Richmond, Virginia. She had 5 sons, and these are their names, along with their spouses. And she had 34 grandchildren, which I am one of, and 8 great-grandchildren. She's also survived by her sister, Arlene Hemsley. So now you have a sister's name, and a brother, Irvin S. Pulsifer, in Mulvane, Kansas. And she was preceded in death by her parents, her husband, and her sister Thora. So there's another sister name right there. So you see how you can glean a whole bunch of information about her relatives. But you also learn that she made wedding gowns and won numerous ribbons at the county and state fairs, and so on and so forth. So I already know these things about my grandmother, but you could find out information about people you didn't know anything about through their obituaries. So you can just go ahead and click back up on this tab here that takes you right back to Ancestry. And now that I know that is my grandmother, I'm going to say, yes, this is a match, and I want it attached to my tree. So this is what the record shows from Find a Grave, and this is what my tree already has. So if there's anything over here that is better than what we have over here, then we transfer it over. So we're going to look and see. I have all that information. Okay, and there is a standardized way that Family Search wants us to record dates and places. So for the dates, these are correct. They're 4th of January 1924 and 25th of February 2001. So it's date of the month first, then the whole name of the month, and then the year. When it comes to places, they want us to write town or city, which would be Ogden in this situation, and the county, but without county, comma, state, comma, and United States, but not of America. And then same thing with her burial. We're going to take out county. So it's a really great service to the church and to the World Tree to standardize these dates and places. So even if your family history has already been quote unquote done, you can come in and clean up those records. So I know this was her husband, and he's listed there with her on the gravestone. Again, I'm going to check for place standardization and date standardization and take those extra words out. Okay. And then that's correct the way I want it, so I'm going to save it to my tree. And it takes us back to the hints page. But you can see if you click on the facts page, it now has information about Ruth Pulsifer, and it's attached this source US Find a Grave Index. So we're going to go back to the hints page, quickly skip through the pictures, which we could also just click on, and you can see a sample of my grandmother's handwriting. Oh, actually this is my grandfather's handwriting. A little love note to Grandma. That's cute. So you can save that to your tree by hitting the green button. And scroll through. And the next record is World War II Army enlistment records. Now I know, because I spoke to my grandmother about it, that she served as a WAC, Women's Army Corps, during World War II. So she enlisted in Ogden, Utah, which would make sense from where she lived. She's from Cache County, Utah, which we saw in her birth information, and she enlisted 10th of June 1944. So we are going to add her. This is just extra information here about her military service, so the dates and places aren't going to show up in Family Tree in the same way, but we can go ahead and make that standard just for aesthetics. So again, that takes us right back to the hints, and we just scroll right down. And we're going to look at the Utah County Obituary Index. And it says on the 20th of February 2001, there was an obituary published for Ruth Lofthouse Pulsifer Hunsaker, but that's all it's going to tell us. If we click on this, it probably will not open an obituary. You have to have memberships to certain websites in order to get those. Even if I type her name in here. See if it pulls anything up. It's always worth a try. Oh, it does. So you can click on it. And again, that's all it tells you. So we'll go back to Ancestry. And yes, that's my grandmother. So we're going to add that. And everything's standardized, so we'll just say save to your tree. And again, back to the hints page, scrolling down. This is the same sort of information, so I'm just going to go ahead and ignore that. But we do have a U.S. Social Security application and claims index, and this is helpful information. Sometimes this is the only death record you can find on people, so let's go over that. Now what happens is when someone dies, the people that are left behind can claim their Social Security benefits. So if they've applied for that benefit, there will be a record from when they died. And here it gives her birth and death dates and the names of her parents. So it's very good information, and we can add that to our tree. And again, this isn't standardized, but I already have it standardized over there. And this is a match to what we already have in our tree. So if this isn't the right father, because sometimes, people have different mothers or fathers than their siblings, you could say not a match and change the person that she's matched to. But we know this is the right guy, and that's her mother, and we're going to save that to our tree. Again, we're back at the hints page, scrolling down quickly. Another obituary. And this one, maybe there'll be a view, but I don't think so. Yeah, I don't have an account with newspapers, so. But it still has all the same good information that they've extracted there, so we can save that to our tree. And maybe when we have a membership, go back and read it. But of course, we have it for free on Find a Grave. So, okay, checking for standardization. So it has the marriage date here from the obituary. So we're going to change that to January and add United States, because this is one of those vital dates that needs to be in standard format. Okay, so that is her husband. And since I changed the marriage date in Ruth's box, it automatically changes it in Melvin's. All right, back to hints. We're down to 17. A lot of those are pictures, though, so. Another Social Security death index we can look at. Same information. But the more records we have, the more clearly we can verify that these are the right dates and right places and right relationships. All right, everything is standard here. The death place is different than we have in our tree, but because I know that my grandma was in a hospital in Ogden when she died, I'm going to stick with that one. All right, so next we have the census records. Just going to look down here. One of the things you want to do is when it comes to census records is you want to find every census record that the person would be on. So my grandmother was born in 1924, so the first census record she would be on is the 1930 census, because in the United States the census records are taken every 10 years. So she would have missed the 1920 census, so she'd be on the 1930 census and the 1940 census. Now we've taken censuses since then, but the latest one that's been released is the 1940 census, because they keep this information private for 70 years. So that's all we get. And let's see, we do have 1930 and 1940. So we're going to look at what she's got on the 1940 census. And she is the daughter. You can see there's her name. She's 16 years old, has an estimated birth year, because on the census record it's going to say her age. Female, white, born in Utah. She's single. She's the daughter of the head of household. This census was taken in Avon Cache, Utah. She was in the same house in 1935. She's attending school, and she is a freshman in high school at 16. And then here it says the names of the people that are on the census with her in that same house. So we have Warren Pulsifer, Emma Pulsifer. That's Ruth. Thora. That could be either the census taker wrote it down wrong or someone transcribed it wrong. And this is supposed to be Arlene, and that's Irvin Scott. So that's her two sisters and her brother. Now, let's just click on a census record so you can see the original handwriting and the original record. And Ancestry is really nice and highlights the family that you're looking at. And I always recommend zooming in. So you zoom in on a census record, and you can see how it'd be easy to make some mistakes because we have handwriting here, and it can be challenging, plus it's a little faded. So here it indicates this is a new household, and here's another one. So we're sticking with this one here, and it says that Warren S. Pulsifer is the head of the household. He's male, he's white, he's 40, and he's married. And he was born in Utah. And his wife is Emma B. Pulsifer. See the little lines there indicate same last name. She's female, white, 41, and married. And there's Ruth. Oh, this says they both finished high school, the third year of high school. And I'm not sure what that column is. Attended school or college. Oh, before a certain date. So, daughter Ruth, she's 16. She's single. She is in school, first year of high school. Thora, daughter, female, white, 14, single. Yes, she's in school, 7th grade. This is Arlene, daughter, female, white, 11, single. Yes, she's in the 5th grade. And that says Irvin Scott, son. He is male, white, 7, single, and in the 1st grade. And they were all born in Utah. And here's where they answer the question that in 1935 they lived in the same house. So these are our people, and we're going to say yes to that. And we're checking for any new information. These are both residency questions, which aren't going to show up in the same way on Family Search, so it's not too important that they are standardized. And this is Warren S. Pulsifer. We have Warren Scott, and it was spelled with an E. About 1900. Yep, that matches. Born in Utah. And here's mother. And all of that looks good. Okay, so this is other children of Warren S. Pulsifer and Emma B. Pulsifer, which would be siblings of Ruth Pulsifer. So we may have already added Thora. Maybe it came over from Family Search, so we want to check and make sure that there isn't a match that the computer is not recognizing. So I always like to click on not a new person, and you can see here that there are no siblings of Ruth Pulsifer, so we haven't added her. And I'm going to click on her name and correct the spelling, and that's all we know about Thora right now. And you can go ahead and add United States, or you can wait until you find more information about her and write the complete place. And we already know there's no siblings, so I'm going to add Arlene and change her name and make it United States. And this is the brother, Irvin. Okay, so saving that to the tree. And now you will notice right here under siblings that those 3 people have been added to your tree. Okay, we're going to keep scrolling down on the hints page. And here's a Department of Veterans Affairs death file. So I remember that my grandmother had a military burial, so that's what generated this record here. And again, it just has her date of birth, date of death, her name, the branch that she served in, when she was enlisted, and when she was released. So now you know how long she served in the military. And we're checking for any new information. All looks good. Save it to the tree. Next hint is Utah military record. I'm going to go ahead and view that. And it tells us a date of birth, her parents, her husband, when she was enlisted, when she was discharged at Camp Beale, California. So now you know at least one place that she served. And this information probably means something to military people, but I'm not sure what that means. And this is an address where she lived, and she served in the WAC. So yes, that's Grandma. And everything looks good there. Oh, now we have her on the 1930 census. So she's going to be younger we would expect about 6 years old because it's 10 years before. And sure enough, she's still the daughter, single, Utah. And look, they've spelled Thora and Arlene correctly, and Irvin's not born yet. So we can go ahead and look at that record, but it's going to be pretty much the same. If there were a mistake, it's always good to go look at the record and see if you can see where the mistake is. Okay, so there's her dad and her mother. And see, now it's matched Thora with the entry we just put in from the 1940 census. That didn't give us any more information, but there's 2 records now attached to Thora and Arlene, proving that they existed. And we have a marriage record. Yes, I believe they were married in the Salt Lake Temple, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. That's right, it's Salt Lake City. That's actually the name of the city. And since I changed it for Ruth, it's going to change it for Melvin. Scrolling down. This is a public record. I'm not sure what. Someplace she lived in Phoenix, which I know she did, with my uncle. Could be like a, phone number. It's from a phone book. I'm not sure why they have her birth date, but sometimes it's good to do these residency things like phone books because you can track where they went if they moved. Like maybe you wouldn't know that she lived in Arizona, since it says she was born and died in Utah. And here she is in a school yearbook. Let's just see what it's showing us. It says, gotta zoom in. See if we can spot her. I think that might be. She's a member of something, Omega. Let's see. I'm not sure. That kind of looks like her eyes. Anyway, you can possibly find pictures of your ancestors through things like yearbooks. So go ahead and save that to the tree. Okay, so we saved all the documents that were under Ruth's name. And now we know more about her. We know her husband, her parents, her siblings, and we can look at all of that information on her fact sheet. And you'll see right here that it says Ancestry sources, the 1930 census, 1940 census, an obituary, public records, Veterans Affairs, Find a Grave, school yearbook, Social Security application, Social Security death index, World War II Army enlisted, military records, select marriage index, and Utah County obituary. So all of these records are now attached to her, and they verify that she existed, and that these are her birth and death dates and places, and marriage date and places, and that's her husband and her siblings. So if she needed her temple work, we could get her ready to go to the temple. She already was a member of the church in this life. And you can see a little bit of a story over here about when she was born, when she was christened or blessed, when her sister was born, when her brother was born, where she lived, when she went into the military. It's just a little timeline of her life. Then her father and mother died, and her husband died, and then finally her death. So to make it a little fancier, if you click on Life Story, it actually starts to tell you a story of Ruth Lofthouse Pulsifer. And so you can use this to write a history of her or just to get to know her better. And it puts little news articles in here. Like, I'm sure in a minute it's going to pop up that there was the New Deal and World War II, serving in the United States Army during World War II. So it just says right there she served there, and you can review what that was all about. Any other events? Let's see. So it's just a fun little story that they write about your ancestors to help you to get to know them better. And there's still some hints there because those are pictures and things like that, which we can go back and add if we want. And then you just can work on her husband, her siblings, her parents, wherever you want to go next, and do the same thing as you get to know these families.